In the dry fire system, there's two different ways that a person can shoot targets. There's the target comes to you where you stand in one spot and the targets are thrown on the wall based on that particular spot. And there's also another method called move around the room, where we actually set up stations on the floor. In trap, you transition from station 1 to 2 to 3 to 4 and so forth. And then in Skeet, you also move around the room and the targets are accurate to you from the spot that you're standing. But in this way, you actually rotate like we do outdoors. That's the way that most people use dry fire, and when you do that, there's some particular things that you need to know about setting up your system so that that experience of move around the room is accurate. So today we're talking to Bob about the topic of anchor points. So Bob's going to explain what is an anchor point, why is it important, and then at the end of this video he's going to actually walk you through showing you on the computer screen how to set up your anchor points and how to do it yourself in your own situation. So let's start. Bob, tell us just briefly what an anchor point is and why it's important to us when we shoot move around the room.
Well, Tom, anchor points are important because what we're trying to do is we're trying to create a true relationship between what goes on indoors and what goes on outdoors. And so, for instance, in the case of trap, we always want the target to start from right interior in the middle of the trap house. Now, we're going to be moving to 5 different stations on the floor, but we want that target to always start in the middle of the trap house because we're going to put our model trap house on the wall, which is 3-dimensional, and we don't want that starting point to start in a different place depending upon the station that you're on. And of course, the same thing is true when we get into Skeet. When we get into Skeet, it's a little bit more complicated, though, because we have 3 points that we're interested in. We've got the high house, we've got the crossover stake, and we've got the low house. So that's what we're doing with anchor points, is we're trying to get on the wall a point that represents a factor outdoors, and it never varies from there.
So if I'm understanding correctly, so with trap we're setting up one anchor point, and where physically is that anchor point in relation to the canvas in the trap house?
Okay, once you end up with your trap house on the wall, which you locate in the process of this, there is a specific location. It's really inside the trap house. Think about a real trap house. The target comes off of a trap arm that's buried somewhere down in the house. And so this is the same thing with dry fire, and we actually give you a spot, a dimensional spot on the wall that you can put a little red dot on, and then you tune both of your heads to this exact spot, which will end up in the middle of your trap house after you put your trap house over the top of it. And then that means that no matter whether you're launching a single target or a pair, both heads are starting from exactly the same spot. And actually, they start from that spot with the visible laser light turned off. And as they move down their trajectory, when we know they would be at the point where it's now outside of the trap house, that's when the visible light gets turned on. So actually, if you located this dot, which will be inside the trap house, and did not have the trap house there and called for targets, you never see the target starting at that point you focused it towards. Instead, it starts up the trajectory in any direction.
So the laser that you see that you're actually shooting at turns on at the top of the trap house, and then it continues the trajectory the rest of the way.
Exactly. And we do that for the reason that we make sure by doing this that the target, which is being driven by a servo, doesn't start at a stationary point, and obviously it couldn't get from 0 speed to 42 miles an hour instantaneously. But when we start it back here, it is easily up to the 42 mile an hour speed by the time we turn the visible light on, and it appears then exactly like what happens on in your trap house outdoors.
And the other thing is that way you don't see the laser actually projected on the back of the trap house.
Exactly.
Which is distracting.
Right.
So what we're doing is we're taking 2 visible lasers, the lasers that are actually our targets that fly across the wall, and we're aligning them onto a particular spot to make sure that they're aligned.
Exactly.
Okay, so trap is one, and it's down in the trap house. Then explain a little bit more what the Skeet. You said that there are 3. Where do we align the Skeet layout?
Okay. Well, we're interested in Skeet in 3 obvious things, which is the high house on the left, the crossover stake in the center, and the low house on the right-hand side. And Skeet is a difficult sport in order to be able to simulate. And so by having 3 anchor points, we then get 3 fixed points on the wall that are not going to vary. And so when we launch a high house target, it's going to start from the high house. It's going to cross over the crossover stake and then land on the ground. And by having these 3 points accurately placed on the wall, we know that none of those things then ever vary. So this is the more complex part of anchor points, where in trap we just discussed there's only 1 anchor point. In Skeet there are 3 anchor points. Now, in Skeet, I should say that there are a couple of targets where there's only 1 anchor point. And that 1 anchor point is when we get to a high house or the station 1 targets. And think about this for a moment. We're going to have you stand in the middle of the room in what would be station number 4 marked on the floor to shoot station 1 targets. And the reason that we're going to do that is because it gets us in a position where we can take care of that overhead shot coming off of the high house Skeet target. So it's going to come from the top and it's going to come down the wall in front of you. And the only thing we're interested in out there is where is the crossover stake. We want to know that the crossover stake is still in the middle of the room, just like it was when we were shooting stations 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. And so by doing that, then you know as the shooter where the target is going to end up, and we put you positionally where you are for station number 1. Now we carry that same mentality on to station number 7. It's, however, a little bit different because on station number 7, as you know, the low house target is going to start down by your right leg. But the end position of that is going to be at the crossover stake. So again, it's going to be a 1 anchor point target, and the anchor point is the crossover stake. So that target is going to come zooming up and going to arrive out here at the crossover stake. And so then station number 8 is the 3rd station at which we're simply using 1 anchor point, and that one we're standing you again on station number 4, but for a high house target number, station number 8, our anchor point is going to be the high house. So we want to know exactly where on the wall the high house is going to be, and we're standing in the middle, and that target's going to come streaking across over the top of us or just slightly off in front of us like it does in the real world. And conversely, when we go to do station 8 low house, then the low house is going to be on the right and the target's going to come across this way. So it's a combination of 3 anchor points or 1 anchor point in Skeet.
So to review, for stations 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, where we're actually moving from station to station, that layout has 3 anchor points.
Correct.
And then when we shoot station 1, 7, and 8 in Skeet, we actually stand on station 4.
Correct.
Which is the middle of the room, and those 3 stations only have 1 anchor point.
That's correct.
Okay.
Right. Let me just mention one other thing that is really important about the entire Skeet layout. Those stations that we compute for you, or where you're going to stand, stations 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6, it's very important that you stand in those locations, because standing at, for instance, at station number 2, where we have it marked on the floor for you, where we've computed it for you, we can say this about it.
The angle to the high house,
the angle to the crossover stake, and the angle to the low house are exactly the same as what you would encounter outdoors. So there's only that one specific spot in the room where the angles are exactly the same as outdoors for station number 2. And then, of course, where we tell you to put station number 3, that's the exact 3 angles for station 3 and going on to 4, 5, and 6. So it's very important when you get into the Skeet layout that you stand on these locations. And also, we many times have people who say they're standing in some other obscure part of the room, and they say that the targets don't look right. And the reason why the targets don't look right to them is because there is only one spot in the room with 3 anchor points that the targets will look the right angles to you.
Right. So the geometry is laid out to be accurate from that station. So what you're saying is make sure that you're standing on that station in order to practice accurately.
Exactly.
And I know that when it comes to stance, a lot of times the Skeet stance is somewhat different than the trap stance. It's a little more forward leaning and so forth. Talk just briefly about when you're standing on station 2, where should that be in relation to your body? Should it be where your front foot is? Should it be where your back foot is? Or the answer that I know you're going to give? Tell us
Okay.
how to know you're accurately standing over a station.
Okay, dry fire has always had the process that when we give you a mark on the floor, that relates to where your shooting eye is. So if you're right-handed and you took a plumb line, a weight on a string, and dropped it from your eye, it should be over that mark that we have on the floor. So when you have the exaggerated Todd Bender lean forward pivot on that front leg, basically you want to experiment a little bit, find out where your feet should be, so that when you get into the pivot, you're leaning forward. If somebody then were to drop a plumb line from your shooting eye, it would be approximately over the top of the mark that you have on the floor. Now, as you mentioned, trap shooters don't have those over leaning because they're not interested in that pivot movement, and so that's much more of an upright position. So in a trap relationship, you have the same rule, which is always make sure that your shooting eye is over the top of the mark on the floor once you're in whatever your stance is.
Very good. That's a very important distinction. So it's where your eye is in relation to the mark on the floor, not your feet.
That's exactly right. That's
Very
exactly
good.
right.
Very good. Well, this has been just an overview description. I know the first time you hear this, it might seem a little overwhelming. In reality, it's not. Now we're going to go on in this video and actually demonstrate how to align your laser using the anchor points. I think once you see that, it'll become clear what's going on and why it's important. And this is, again, something that you're going to want to do when you set up your dry fire so you get the maximum accuracy out of the system. So we hope you've enjoyed this discussion, and stay tuned on this video for the next little bit of information.
I'd like to show you what it looks like on the wall as we are tuning the anchor points for first a Skeet layout and then for a trap layout. Where you want to go on your computer is you want to go to this bar which says Configure Room Mode and Anchor Points, and left click, and that opens up the Configure Room dialog box. Now you're going to go down and click on Fine Tune Head Positions, and that reveals the point where you're going to be able to control where the laser dot is on the wall. This side over here is for head number 1, this side over here is for head number 2, or you can think about this, the left head and the right head. Now you're going to be clicking on the larger arrows to go in the direction that it is pointing. So now I'm going to go ahead and we're going to now switch over and take a look at high house. And on the high house, I'm now going to start adjusting, and you can see that the two lasers are not where the orange dot is on the wall. So I'm now moving by clicking the left head, and I've got it proper horizontally, and now I'm moving it down to the dot. And that's about as close as I can get. Now then I'm going to take the right hand head, move it to the left, and bring it on down. And there we are. Now at this point I'm going to click on OK, because I want to give the lasers a little bit of time to rest, because if you keep these on too long, you run the risk of damaging them from a heating condition. And in this mode, it does not automatically turn off, so be a little bit careful there. So I've now adjusted the high house. Next I'm going to adjust the crossover stake. So now I'm going to go back and click on Fine Tune, and I'm going to come up here to the top and select stake. And now they're in the middle, and you can see them in the middle, and I'm just going to start experimenting. This is the left-hand head, and you can see that I've moved it onto my marker dot. And now I'm going to move my right-hand head. All right, we're getting a little bit closer. There we are. Okay, so now they're both on that dot. Now I'm going to click OK and rest the lasers, and while I'm doing that, let me explain that on the wall, because our canvas is almost 18 feet wide, and we've measured and we've put those, the dot that's over by the high house is 105 inches to the left of the center, and there is a dot on the right hand side that is 105 inches to the right of center, and the dot in the middle is exactly in the center, and all three of these dots are set at our horizon height, which on this particular canvas is 63 inches. And so now that we've given that a little rest, I'm going to go ahead and click on Fine Tune again, and this time I'm going to select the low house, and now I'm going to go ahead and start moving, and now I'm clicking on the left, moving it over. I've got it just about right. I just got to bring it down a couple of clicks. There we are. Now I'm going to take the right hand head. Yep, went over too far, so let me bring it back. And sometimes you have to click quite a while. You'd be surprised, and you'll learn to be a fast clicker if you want to get these things in the right spot. Now that is very much close enough, and I'm going to click on the OK button to rest the lasers. And so now what we've done in that simple process is we have told the software exactly where these physical points are on the wall. And prior to us starting this portion of the video, we did a good job of accurately locating these 3 dots on the wall, and now we've tuned to that. And you might ask the question then, how often do you have to do this? You only do this once, and that one time is the first time you bring in that layout. Now in the case of Skeet, there are 5 different layouts. So you're going to go through this same process for all 5 layouts. Once you've done that for all 5 layouts, then irregardless of which one of these layouts you pick, it will go ahead and already be tuned for you.